They tell you to be a good man, polite, gentle, understanding. They tell you that women want kindness, empathy, emotional intelligence. But what they don't tell you is that being good can become the fastest way to destroy yourself. Because the truth is, most men who call themselves good aren't really good. They're afraid. Afraid of losing her. Afraid of being disliked. Afraid of being seen as harsh, dominant, or cold. So they trade their instincts for approval, their backbone for affection, and call it love. But love built on fear isn't love, it's performance. And no woman, no matter how compassionate she is, can fall deeply in love with a man who secretly kneels for validation. Being a good man used to mean something different. It meant being disciplined, loyal, and powerful enough to protect others. It meant having values so strong they created safety around you. Now, good means agreeable, non-threatening, predictable. And that's the death of attraction. See, the modern good man isn't respected for his kindness, he's tolerated for his compliance. He becomes the emotional cushion, the therapist, the safety net for a woman who's already lost interest. He listens to her stories about other men, comforts her when those men hurt her, and still believes that his goodness will eventually be noticed. But it won't. Because she doesn't feel him. She feels his fear, his restraint, his quiet desperation for approval. You see, women don't consciously reject kindness, they subconsciously reject weakness disguised as kindness. There's a difference. A kind man acts from strength. A nice man acts from fear. And the moment a woman senses that your kindness is just a strategy to be loved, the game is over. She may still smile. She may still hug you. But something inside her closes. Respect evaporates silently, and once it's gone, no amount of good behavior can bring it back. It's a brutal truth most men refuse to face. Because it feels unfair. You do everything right, you listen, you care, you show up, and still, you end up the one hurting. You start to think women only want men who mistreat them. But that's not it. They want men who can make them feel safe through strength, not men who make them feel safe through surrender. A good man without power is invisible. A powerful man without goodness is dangerous. But a man who can blend both, that's rare, magnetic, and unforgettable. When a man loses his edge in the name of being good, he stops being a man and becomes a mirror, reflecting whatever she wants, saying whatever keeps the peace, existing only to be accepted. But love doesn't grow in that kind of soil. It withers. Because she can't trust a man who has no boundaries, and you can't love a woman if you secretly hate yourself for constantly bending. Being a good man with women will hurt you because it's a game you can't win. Not because women are cruel, but because nature is cruel. The masculine and the feminine were never meant to be equal in energy. They're meant to balance through polarity, firmness and softness, order and chaos, logic and feeling. When you give up your polarity in the name of being nice, you kill the spark that creates attraction. You become her friend, her confidant, her emotional trash bin. And deep down, you start to resent her for not seeing your worth, when in truth, you were the one who buried it. The most dangerous belief a man can hold is that if he's good enough, patient enough, loyal enough, she'll eventually love him back. But attraction doesn't negotiate with logic. It's not a reward for moral behavior. It's an instinctive response to strength, mystery, and emotional self-control. And so the good man suffers, not because he's good, but because he's forgotten what goodness really is. Real goodness doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It doesn't break its own principles to be liked. True goodness has weight. It's steady, calm, grounded. It can say no without guilt and walk away without resentment. But most men don't learn that until the pain teaches them. Until the woman they protected, listened to, and adored walks away, not for someone better, but for someone more alive. Then they realize, being good isn't the problem. Being harmless is. That's the wound most modern men carry. Confusing love with servitude, mistaking tolerance for intimacy, and learning too late that women don't fall in love with comfort. They fall in love with presence. And presence demands that you stop being a good man for her, and start being a whole man for yourself. There was a man named Daniel. He was the type of man every woman says she wants. Gentle, polite, the kind who texts back immediately, who remembers anniversaries, who listens more than he speaks. He built his life around one belief, that if he gave enough love, he'd eventually be loved in return. He met her, the woman he thought was different. She was vibrant, full of life, spontaneous in a way he wasn't. And he admired that about her. He wanted to make her feel safe, seen, and cared for. So he gave everything, his time, his energy, his attention. Every time she was upset, he listened. Every time she pulled away, he chased gently, thinking consistency would heal her doubts. But what he didn't see was how his devotion slowly killed her attraction. Not because she didn't appreciate him, but because she couldn't feel him anymore. He became predictable, too available, too easy. His world revolved around her, and that's when she began to lose respect, not consciously, but instinctively. One night, as they argued over something small, she said, "You're just too nice." He laughed it off, but inside, something broke. That sentence haunted him. Too nice. How could that be wrong? Weeks later, she left him for a man who made her feel what Daniel had tried to replace with comfort, tension, desire, uncertainty. Daniel learned the hard way that when a man's kindness has no edge, it stops feeling like love and starts feeling like suffocation. Then there was Mark, a husband of 12 years. He did everything for his family. Paid the bills, fixed the car, cooked on weekends. When his wife grew distant, he thought she was just stressed. He bought her flowers, wrote her notes, booked trips to rekindle what they once had. But every act of love felt heavier than the last because her eyes no longer held the same warmth. One day, he found messages on her phone. Another man. Someone who made her laugh, someone who didn't chase, who didn't overextend, who didn't apologize for taking up space. Mark confronted her, and all she said was, "You're a great guy, but I don't feel it anymore." He was crushed. Not just by her betrayal, but by the confusion. How could being a great guy not be enough? But that's the quiet tragedy of the good man. He believes relationships are equations. Give enough and you'll receive love in return. But attraction isn't math. It's chemistry. And chemistry can't thrive in emotional symmetry. It needs polarity, the masculine and feminine dancing on the edge of tension. Another story, a younger one. Ethan, 28. Bright, sensitive, soft-spoken. He'd been in love with his best friend, Claire, for 3 years. She told him everything, about her bad dates, her fears, her loneliness. He was her emotional safe place. The friend she could cry to at 2 a.m. And he thought, deep down, that one day she'd see what he saw, that he was the one who truly cared. But one night, after another heartbreak, she said, "I just wish I could find a guy like you." He smiled, but that sentence shattered him. Because he knew she never would. She didn't want him, she wanted the feeling of safety he gave her, without the man behind it. And Ethan learned something painful. Being the good guy is often just being the man she trusts to never be chosen. These men aren't rare. They're everywhere. They're the silent ones sitting at bars, staring into drinks, wondering what they did wrong. They're the husbands scrolling through photos of their wives with other men, asking themselves how love could vanish without warning. They're the quiet ones, the dependable ones, the ones who give too much and receive nothing but confusion in return. They all share the same flaw. They gave love unconditionally to women who never earned their respect. See, women test men constantly, not out of cruelty, but instinct. They test to feel your center, to see if you bend or break. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you apologize for having boundaries, every time you hide your truth to keep her comfortable, she feels it. She feels the weakness beneath your goodness. And the paradox is cruel. The more you try to prove your love, the less she believes in your strength. A woman doesn't want to be loved desperately, she wants to be loved decisively. She wants to feel that you choose her, but that you could also walk away if she stops respecting you. That's what creates the tension that keeps love alive. The men who understand this aren't cruel or cold, they simply don't make love a transaction. They give, but not from fear. They listen, but not to be liked. They lead with calm conviction, not emotional obedience. There's a difference between pleasing a woman and leading a woman with love. One drains you, the other transforms you. And until you learn that difference, being a good man will keep breaking you, over and over again. Because goodness without boundaries doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you invisible. There comes a point in every man's life when he realizes that love, as he was taught, is a kind of lie. Not because love itself is false, but because the version he was sold was stripped of power, sterilized, softened, made to please instead of to lead. He was told that being attentive would make him desirable, that empathy would make him irreplaceable, that if he just loved deeply enough, she would never leave. But life doesn't reward intensity. It rewards truth. And the truth is this: the more a man abandons his core to win her heart, the faster she walks away. Because women don't fall for the man who sacrifices himself at the altar of love, they fall for the man who refuses to. The one who can love her completely and still walk away when respect disappears. That's power. That's presence. That's the kind of man she can trust, because he doesn't lose himself trying to keep her. Most men never reach that stage. They spend years trying to understand why their goodness turns to grief. They replay the moment she pulled away, they scroll through old photos, they analyze words that meant nothing. And they can't see that the real wound isn't her leaving, it's realizing he was never truly himself in the relationship. He censored his truth to avoid conflict. He softened his opinions to avoid tension. He became emotionally fluent, yet spiritually hollow. He gave everything, except the one thing she actually needed, his edge. Because it's not cruelty she fears. It's emptiness. It's the absence of a man's grounded self, that calm, immovable energy that says, "I love you, but I will not lose myself for you." Without that, love turns into performance. And performance always ends in resentment. There's a kind of quiet pain that only good men know. It's the pain of watching her eyes change. The pain of realizing she no longer looks at you like a man, but like a pillow, soft, safe, and uninspiring. It's the pain of lying next to someone who once needed your strength, but now pities your softness. That pain doesn't scream. It lingers. It eats you slowly. You start to question everything: your worth, your masculinity, your ability to attract. You tell yourself she just changed. But deep down, you know you did too. You stopped being the man she first desired because you wanted to be the man she wouldn't leave. You traded polarity for peace. And peace without respect is just quiet misery. Every time you swallowed your anger instead of expressing it with control. Every time you agreed when your gut said no. Every time you begged instead of walked away. You trained her to see you as less than you are. You thought you were saving the relationship, but you were actually killing attraction. Because women don't crave perfection. They crave tension. The dynamic between her chaos and your calm. Her emotion and your logic. Her storm and your ground. When you erase that polarity, you erase desire. This is where the suffering deepens, because once you lose her respect, you start to overcompensate. You become even nicer, more patient, more accommodating. And the more you do, the colder she becomes. Until one day she says, "I just don't feel it anymore." And in that moment, the world collapses. Not because she left, but because you realize she was never truly yours to begin with. She was only drawn to the version of you that existed before you started begging for love. That realization breaks something inside a man. But it also births something new. A clarity. A darker, quieter wisdom. He starts to see that women don't respect men who give love without limits. They respect men who have the strength to choose where that love goes. He sees that the same energy that made him too good can also make him powerful, if directed with intention. And he learns, painfully, brutally, that love without self-respect is just emotional slavery. There's a moment, every man who's been broken knows it, when the pain finally becomes fuel. When he stops asking, why wasn't I enough? And starts asking, why did I abandon myself? That's the turning point. Because now he sees what he couldn't before. That being good isn't about how much you give, it's about what you refuse to give up. Your time, your values, your peace, your edge. When a man reclaims that, when he stops trying to please and starts to embody, something changes in his energy. He no longer asks, does she like me? He asks, does she respect me? And that shift rewires everything. It changes how he speaks, how he walks, how he listens. Women can feel it, not in his words, but in the silence between them. That's the paradox every man must face. You only become irresistible when you no longer need to be. But before you reach that peace, you'll walk through hell, the kind of hell that burns the boy in you so that the man can emerge. And when you come out on the other side, you won't hate women. You'll simply understand them. You'll see that they never wanted your servitude, they wanted your presence. They never wanted your perfection, they wanted your polarity. And finally, you'll understand why being a good man, without power, was always a slow road to pain. There's a strange silence that follows the storm. After the heartbreak, after the begging, after the confusion fades, a man sits alone with himself. The world gets quiet. The noise of validation dies out. And for the first time, he's forced to see who he's been without anyone watching. That silence is the beginning of truth. Because it's in that stillness where he realizes the woman was never the lesson, he was. She was only the mirror. The reflection of the boundaries he didn't have, the self-respect he abandoned, the strength he forgot. And when that truth sinks in, something sacred happens. The pain that once broke him now sharpens him. It cuts away the parts of him that were built on need. The need to be liked, the need to be chosen, the need to prove his worth through her affection. He begins to see how the world raised him to be half a man, emotionally open, but spiritually fragile. They told him vulnerability was everything, but forgot to tell him that vulnerability without strength is self-destruction. They told him empathy is the key, but not that empathy without boundaries is a weapon against yourself. So he learns to rebuild. Slowly, quietly, differently. He starts to realize that true goodness is not about pleasing, it's about principle. It's not about being agreeable, it's about being grounded. He can still be kind, but his kindness now has teeth. He can still love deeply, but his love no longer kneels. He becomes the kind of man who can look a woman in the eye and say, I don't need you to complete me, but I choose you because I'm whole. And that energy, that calm, steady conviction, is what draws women in effortlessly. Because they can feel that he is no longer performing. There's no need to impress. No hidden contract of approval. No desperation behind the smile. Just presence. He's not loud. He doesn't need to be. He's not chasing validation. He's too busy building his world. And in that world, love becomes something sacred again. Not a negotiation, but an offering. You see, the modern world has confused softness with goodness, and dominance with cruelty. But the truth lives in the balance between them. A man must be both warrior and poet, strong enough to protect, soft enough to feel. But he must never forget which one comes first. A man without strength will always become a slave to his emotions. A man without heart will always destroy what he touches. But a man who has both becomes unbreakable. And that's what true goodness is. Power under control. Not chaos. Not submission. Not silence. But mastery. He no longer loves because he wants to be seen as good. He loves because it's his nature. He's not trying to be the safe option. He's trying to be the honest one. He knows that the right woman doesn't want a man who's endlessly accommodating. She wants a man she can feel safe to surrender to, because his energy is steady, not needy. That's the paradox of love. You only inspire devotion when you no longer seek it. So he walks differently now. He speaks slower. He looks people in the eye. He doesn't flinch when they disagree, because he knows truth doesn't need to shout. And when a woman comes into his life now, she feels something ancient, something that words can't describe. It's not about looks, or status, or charm. It's presence. A quiet gravity that says, I know who I am. And I won't lose that for anyone. That's what separates the good man from the great man. The good man wants peace. The great man creates it. The good man avoids conflict. The great man faces it with calm. The good man chases approval. The great man commands respect. And that's why the path of being good without power always leads to pain, because it strips you of what makes love real. The irony is, once you stop chasing it, the world starts to respond differently. Women listen. People follow. Respect flows naturally, not because you demanded it, but because you became it. You become the man who no longer needs to be good, because he has become whole. And wholeness is what women truly crave, even if they can't explain it. Not the perfect man. Not the selfless man. The integrated one. The man who can hold both light and shadow without apology. So remember this. You were never meant to be good. You were meant to be true. Goodness can be faked. Truth cannot. And when you finally live from that truth, when you stop performing, stop pleasing, stop bending, that's when you stop suffering. That's when the pain ends. That's when love becomes peace again. Because you're no longer the boy trying to be liked. You're the man who finally understands that love doesn't require losing yourself. It only asks that you become real.